Joining us now to talk about the overall economic picture and the market outlook for U.S. beef is Jessica Sampson, an agricultural economist with the Livestock Marketing Information Center right here in Denver. Jessica, thanks for coming to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We hear a lot about the volatility in the global financial markets right now. What does that mean to the beef business?
Well, you know, it's a really interesting question and it's complex, but everything's so linked now globally. So you talk about global financial markets, stock markets, commodity markets, energy markets, and it all plays together and it's hard to get a handle on. So the most recent example would be China when they devalued their currency, and that really had reverberations internationally from stock markets, financial markets here and abroad. We saw it reflect there were issues with the commodity markets going up and down. And that volatility just creates a lot of uncertainty in markets that makes it harder to do business in that market. Now, to bring it back specifically to our domestic beef and cattle industry, those operators who use the commodity and futures market in their business plans, it just gives them a lot more difficulties, and it's harder to use that at that point.
Let's talk consumers for just a minute. What do you see happening both in terms of wholesale and retail trade of beef?
Well, for a year now, we've seen record high beef prices across the board, from the live animal to the retail. And we've been concerned about consumer demand because of those high beef prices, but demand has been very strong. Now, we see those prices start to come down as we're increasing our supply. If we go back to that volatility we're talking about in world markets from an international standpoint, the volatility has created some issues with demand. But the bright spot in that is the U.S. economy. It's seen as one of the stronger economies, more growth, and that's a really good point for the beef industry in terms of consumer demand and continuing. And then as these beef prices fall, people will start to buy more.
That's the hope, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's look outside our borders for just a minute as we think specifically globally. Our global customers are important customers. Now, we still don't have access to China or Russia. What does that mean to the beef industry?
Well, correct. So we don't export any beef currently to Russia or China. Russia imposed a ban on European Union and U.S. products, and China just does not allow U.S. beef into their country. Now, I want to use both of these countries as examples of how that really plays with the beef industry. So Russia used to import a lot of pork from the European Union. They do not do that anymore. The EU has to find a home, another market for that pork, and it's usually in competition with international markets that U.S. sends its pork to. Now, if we can't send as much pork abroad, U.S. pork, that comes back onto the domestic market. More product on the market lowers the supply, so people will buy that product. More price competition from a beef standpoint. China, on the other hand, their economy is struggling. We know that. Disposable income's decreasing. People have less money to spend on these higher priced proteins, and they import a lot of beef from Australia. So again, Australia will have to find new markets to put their beef, and that creates competition with U.S. beef internationally and here domestically.
I'm glad you mentioned Australia because I wanted to ask you about that.
Okay.
We're getting quite a few imports from Australia, especially of lean beef.
Right.
Tell us what the conditions look like down under.
Okay, well, we do import a lot of that 90% lean, some hamburger, more ground beef type, and what that beef's used for is more the pre-made and then frozen products. So for example, that pre-cooked bean and beef burrito that you can buy in the frozen aisle of the grocery store. We are importing quite a lot of that product right now for several factors. We have a very tight cattle supply here in the U.S. Australia is dealing with a very heavy drought that's been ongoing. And then more recently, the value of the U.S. dollar relative to Australian currency has, the value of the U.S. dollar has gone up, so it's cheaper for us to import that product. Now, the Australia economy is struggling also slightly right now. But as we well know here, when you have a drought and you're liquidating your cattle herd, that can't go on forever. The drought will turn around, or you're going to run out of cattle. So in Australia, they've been exporting so much product that they're getting to that point. And the U.S. is really well positioned as we've started we've increased our cattle inventory. We started that upswing of the cycle. We'll be really well positioned to provide product to those markets that Australia used to support, but we'll have to bring back their level of supply when they start increasing their herd inventory.
Great perspective. Thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
If you'd like more information, you can visit the Livestock Marketing Information Center website. That's at lmic.info. And don't forget, you can watch video replays of our program anytime at our website, cattlemen2cattlemen.org.